Hello, and thank you for joining us today. Today, we have a ghost story. You like ghost stories? People have been telling ghost stories since ancient times, and the people of the age of exploration liked ghost stories just as much as any other people before or since. Sometimes, ghost stories even have a moral. One of these stories, popular for hundreds of years, is the ghost story of a ship called the Flying Dutchman. You may have heard of this ship in pop culture. Educators, please, watch this before you share with your younger learners, as it might be a little bit spooky. It was a dark and stormy night. Captain Hendrick Van der Decken stood on the deck of his ship, his legs planted wide to keep from falling as the ship rolled from side to side in the heavy seas. He could barely make out the African shore through the driving rain, but knew that navigating the tricky shoreline to enter into Table Bay was the only way his ship would survive the howling gale. He shouted orders into the wind, hoping his men would hear and obey. The bow of the ship plunged down into the trench between waves, riding up the opposite side just in time. If the ship turned the wrong way, the waves would wash over the deck of the ship and take members of the crew with it. Men clung to the rigging of the sails, holding tight to keep from being blown into the decks or into the sea. The first mate struggled across the deck as the ship pitched and rolled and shouted into the captain's ear. "Sir, we should try to make it round the cape. We may be dashed into the rocks if we continue trying to make our way into the bay." The captain shook his head. The Cape of Good Hope was a treacherous place, near impossible to navigate in the storm. "May I be eternally damned if I do, though I should beat about here till the day of judgment." At that moment, an enormous wave swept over the ship and carried ship and crew down to the bottom of the sea. The captain opened his eyes to the blinding sunlight of a clear day. He groaned as he rolled over onto his hands and knees and pushed himself up off the deck. He remembered the ship going down, remembered trying to hold his breath as the waters closed over his head, and the feeling of the ship sucking him down into the darkness. Had it all been a dream? As he looked around, he saw the rest of the crew looking as dazed as he felt. Over the railing, the mouth of the harbor was close at hand. Clearing his throat, he ordered the sails let out and the helmsman to steer the ship into the harbor. They could all use a rest before continuing the perilous trip around the Cape and onward to Java. As they reached the entrance to the harbor, it felt as if the ship hit an invisible wall. Men were knocked to the deck, but there was nothing there. Turning in all directions to see what they had hit, the captain saw nothing, except for another ship bearing down on them without slowing. He shouted a warning, but the other ship kept coming and sailed right through them. He called to a fishing vessel sailing out of the harbor mouth, but the little boat went right by without even acknowledging his hail. The mate called out in despair, "Captain, you've doomed us with your blasphemous boast. Now see, we are ghosts to the world." Thank you for joining us for this story today. The story has persisted, and people still claim to see the Flying Dutchman around the Cape. We hope you like this video, and will click the like button and subscribe for more stories, because the story of history never ends. If you would like more hands-on history, visit our website at historyunboxed.com. We will see you next time.